High fashion's carefully curated illusion didn't just crack, it shattered in real time. In a matter of hours, anonymous Chinese factory bosses transformed into viral figures on TikTok, casually revealing they had a hand in producing the world's most exclusive handbags, Hermès Birkins. These weren't conspiracy theories or backroom rumors, they were raw, first-hand videos showing orange leather hides stacked in industrial warehouses and laser machines slicing out silhouettes that looked eerily familiar. Viewers weren't just shocked, they were enraged. The idea that handbags selling for six figures were potentially mass-produced in Chinese factories flew in the face of everything Hermès promised: handcrafted luxury, exclusivity, and authenticity. The backlash was immediate and relentless. TikTok became ground zero for luxury exposés as users dissected every frame of the leaked footage. Headlines from fashion media to business outlets screamed betrayal. Viral hashtags like Birkin scam and luxury lies began trending globally. High-end collectors and influencers who once flaunted their Birkin bags were now scrambling to distance themselves. Some even boxed up their collections on camera, calling out what they described as corporate deception. Claims swirled that up to 80% of so-called French-made handbags were actually assembled in China, only to be finished in Europe and branded with the coveted Made in France label. The internet wasn't just watching, it was demanding answers. But Hermès didn't stay silent. Within days, the French luxury giant launched a series of lawsuits targeting not only the Chinese factories involved, but also TikTok itself. The brand accused them of spreading defamatory content, leaking trade secrets, and misusing trademarked imagery. Videos began disappearing, hashtags were shadow banned, and some TikTok accounts mysteriously vanished. Yet instead of quelling the storm, Hermès's aggressive legal push only poured gasoline on it. The internet smelled a cover-up. And suddenly, Hermès wasn't just facing a supply chain scandal, it was staring down a full-blown PR crisis that could rewrite the narrative around luxury fashion forever. Within hours of the scandal erupting online, Hermès moved with surgical precision. The French luxury powerhouse reportedly filed a sweeping lawsuit targeting 3 Chinese leather goods manufacturers based in Guangdong, and even took aim at TikTok itself. The legal claims were intense and far-reaching: defamation, trademark dilution, theft of trade secrets, and digital trespass. Hermès wasn't just trying to silence a few viral videos, it was sending a message to the entire internet. Interfere with the sanctity of the orange box and you'll pay dearly, in court, in cash, and in credibility. But the internet doesn't forget. And it certainly doesn't forgive quickly. Almost overnight, TikTok began scrubbing videos. Popular hashtags vanished. Entire accounts linked to the exposé were shadow banned or outright frozen. But instead of burying the controversy, Hermès accidentally amplified it. The Streisand effect roared to life. Screenshots of the lawsuit leaked across social media platforms, fueling more curiosity. Suddenly, millions of users who hadn't seen the original TikToks were now desperate to get their hands on the censored content Hermès was trying so hard to erase. The brand's attempt to regain control only made the story explode louder and wider. Then came the counterpunch, from inside the factories themselves. But this time, it wasn't viral videos doing the talking. It was leaked documents. Dozens of PDFs surfaced in Discord servers and WeChat groups, offering a paper trail that sent shockwaves through the luxury fashion world. Internal purchase orders from 2023 bore codes like H51X, which insiders quickly linked to Hermès product lines. High-resolution photos showed bins labeled HMS Buckle and trays filled with signature H hardware components. Shipping logs traced routes from Shenzhen factories straight to European ports. These weren't wild allegations, they were receipts. And the internet devoured every single one. In one of the most damning leaked clips, a Chinese factory manager casually pointed to a nearly finished Kelly bag and claimed it was headed to France, where it would be completed and stamped "Made in France." That single moment detonated across social media. Collectors began zooming in on serial numbers, comparing embossing, stitching, and foil fonts. Environmental advocates joined the uproar, highlighting the hypocrisy of outsourcing to high-emission factories while marketing artisanal, sustainable luxury. The imagery was too stark to ignore, luxury consumers paying tens of thousands for what appeared to be cleverly outsourced mass production. In Paris, the pressure was so intense that, as one outlet joked, a Hermès executive reportedly spilled espresso on his bespoke tie. The scandal crossed over from internet drama to global fashion crisis as celebrities entered the chat. Reality star and entrepreneur Bethany Frankel stunned followers by revealing she'd spent over $100,000 dissecting luxury handbags to understand their craftsmanship. Her post pulled no punches. Half of it made in Guangdong? Corporate greed at its finest. That sentiment echoed across A-list circles. Kylie Jenner, without naming names, dropped a cryptic side-by-side photo. One half showing a pristine Birkin inside a boutique, the other showing a nearly identical bag in the middle of a chaotic factory line. Meanwhile, Cardi B, known for both her Birkin obsession and brutal honesty, joked on X that she'd rather buy the real fake version at wholesale prices. The internet did what it does best, turned scandal into spectacle. The hashtag dark luxury scam surged past 200 million views on TikTok, pulling in fashion analysts, watchdog groups, and even sneakerhead YouTubers who began roasting luxury handbags like they were overhyped Jordans. Videos dissecting stitching patterns, supply chain loopholes, and Hermès's legendary waitlist culture flooded the algorithm. Viewers weren't just watching, they were questioning everything they thought they knew about high fashion. And with each new revelation, it became increasingly clear. This wasn't just about handbags anymore. It was about trust, truth, and the high price of illusion. What started as quiet whispers about Hermès outsourcing quickly exploded into a full-blown pop culture reckoning. And when pop culture turns, financial markets follow. The moment TikTok flooded with factory clips and leaked documents, investor confidence wavered. Within just 48 hours, Hermès shares plunged nearly 7%, wiping billions from the company's market valuation. Auction houses quietly postponed upcoming Birkin sales, wary of volatility. Meanwhile, luxury resale platforms like The RealReal and Vestiaire Collective reported a sudden spike in listings as panicked collectors rushed to offload their bags, fearful that the Hermès mystique was evaporating by the minute. With every headline and viral post, Hermès, long seen as the untouchable crown jewel of French luxury, began to look toxic. Once proudly gatekept by waitlists and exclusivity, the brand now found itself at the mercy of public scrutiny. Influencers who once flaunted their Birkins began hiding them. Investment analysts downgraded Hermès stock, warning that the company's reliance on artisanal French craftsmanship as a brand pillar was now under credible threat. Consumers weren't just concerned about quality, they felt deceived. The backlash wasn't about price, it was about perceived betrayal. People weren't paying $20,000 for a handbag. They were paying for heritage, transparency, and trust, and that trust was cracking. Inside Hermès's Paris headquarters, what was meant to be a routine quarterly meeting descended into chaos. Executives flew in from around the globe under emergency orders. NDAs were hastily signed. Security locked down conference room doors. And behind those doors, tempers exploded. Senior VPs from marketing and product development reportedly accused the supply chain division of quietly greenlighting offshore vendors without cross-departmental approval, all in an effort to trim costs while preserving profit margins. According to sources cited by French business outlets, the room split into factions. Some called for public transparency, others demanded silence. But one thing was clear: the brand built on legacy was now fighting for survival in real time. The breaking point came when one furious director reportedly slammed a thick dossier onto the boardroom table. Inside, damning internal Slack messages, procurement contracts, and sourcing memos, all tracing a clear supply chain from Hermès headquarters to multiple Chinese factories. These weren't shipments of raw crocodile hides or uncut leather. These were fully assembled components, straps, hardware, even near-complete bag shells, greenlit and signed off by high-level executives. The revelation stunned the room. Hermès, a brand built on the artisanal mystique of French craftsmanship, had quietly depended on offshore labor for years. This wasn't a rogue vendor. This was policy. Legal counsel didn't mince words. If even one of those documents confirmed that Hermès knowingly approved items for final assembly in France while labeling them "Made in France," it could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. The French Competition Authority, already known for its aggressive stance on false advertising and consumer protection, could launch a full-scale probe. Even worse, EU regulators might intervene on grounds of fraudulent origin labeling, something that could not only lead to massive fines but permanently damage the brand's legal right to use the coveted Made in France designation. For Hermès, the risk wasn't just financial, it was existential. The label that justified five-figure price tags might soon be reclassified as deceptive marketing. The fallout came swiftly. Within 72 hours, two senior procurement executives retired under immense internal pressure. One had been with the company for nearly 20 years, overseeing leather goods acquisitions since the early 2000s. The other was responsible for managing Hermès's complex Asia-based vendor network, now exposed on Reddit and TikTok through leaked spreadsheets and shell company documentation. The speed of the purge was surgical. One executive's nameplate was reportedly stripped from his office door before he had even packed up his belongings. And yet, the crisis showed no signs of slowing. As more insiders leaked details and social media dug deeper, Hermès faced the terrifying reality that its most prized asset, its brand integrity, was unraveling before a global audience. Inside Hermès, the scandal was no longer a crisis. It was a full-blown reckoning. Sources close to the matter revealed that the CFO's office was now under internal audit, with forensic accountants combing through subcontract signatures tied to China-based vendors. Questions swirled about how deeply the executive suite was entangled. Even Hermès's usually untouchable CEO was reportedly under pressure, with Bernard Arnault of LVMH, France's most powerful luxury magnate, allegedly calling the controversy a preventable humiliation. What was once dismissed as TikTok noise had become a billion-euro embarrassment echoing across boardrooms in Paris and Geneva. And the luxury world wasn't just watching. It was spiraling. Chanel and Dior triggered emergency internal audits, desperate to ensure they wouldn't be next. Because in luxury, perception is everything. And right now, the perception was bleeding. One unnamed executive reportedly told Le Figaro, "If Hermès falls, we all bleed." And fall it did, dragging the industry's polished facade down with it. Stock portfolios dipped across the board. Fashion houses scrambled to hire crisis PR firms. Behind closed doors, marketing teams tore up Q3 ad campaigns, replacing prestige narratives with risk control strategies. The exclusivity that once defined these maisons suddenly felt like a liability. No one wanted to be caught selling six-figure handbags stamped with illusions. Because this wasn't just a supply chain hiccup, it was a reputational hemorrhage, the kind of breach that shatters trust, and trust is the backbone of luxury. Without it, a Birkin is just leather, a Chanel suit is just wool, and customers, now more skeptical than ever, weren't just unfollowing brands, they were investigating them. The most damning revelations weren't hidden in Parisian vaults, they were buried in global shipping data. One supplier flagged by analysts, Dragon Luxe Sourcing Ltd, claimed to operate out of a sleek Hong Kong office. But when reporters visited, it was nothing more than a locked mailbox above a dim sum restaurant. Public registrar documents revealed something darker. The company was owned by a Luxembourg shell corporation chaired by a now-retired Hermès VP. Meanwhile, in Shenzhen, small tooling shops reported zero domestic revenue, yet satellite images captured outbound trucks leaving daily at dawn. Investigators called it phantom invoicing. Hides logged as furniture leather, quietly routed through Vietnamese intermediaries, then re-imported into France labeled as heritage artisanal goods. One logistics firm leaked a heat map showing a troubling trend. Spikes in leather shipments from Guangdong consistently aligned with Hermès's public launch of new limited edition colorways. Coincidence? Not likely. This was luxury laundering, hidden in plain sight. Environmental watchdogs didn't just criticize, they dropped bombshells. Independent tests conducted near tanneries in Dongguan, a major leather processing hub, revealed chromium contamination levels 6 times higher than China's own legal limits. This heavy metal, often linked to skin irritation, respiratory issues, and long-term health damage, was traced directly to runoff from facilities contracted to produce leather goods for high-end labels. Making matters worse, investigators released photographs of these very factories, proudly displaying Hermès purchase orders taped to their office windows. visual proof that the brand's eco-friendly marketing claims were dangerously disconnected from reality. For a label that touts sustainability and artisanal craftsmanship as core values, the revelations didn't just raise eyebrows, they sparked outrage, and then came the human cost. As the environmental scandal broke, labor abuse claims surfaced like aftershocks. Former workers from Guangdong factories began sharing testimonials online, many of which were later scrubbed or mysteriously deleted. One account described sewing Birkin handles for up to 14 hours a day, earning the equivalent of $2 per hour, less than the retail price of a single tassel accessory on the finished bag. The most explosive allegation came from a self-identified former quality control assistant who claimed that bags failing Hermès' strict inspection standards weren't discarded or downgraded, they were rerouted. According to her post, flawed products were assigned fresh serial codes, packed off to France for minor touch-ups, and then sold at full price as flawless originals. The markups that once inspired envy now provoked disgust. It wasn't just about being overcharged, it was about being misled. The illusion of ethical luxury had shattered, and the fallout extended far beyond TikTok drama. Investors began pressuring Hermès for immediate answers. Activist shareholders demanded transparency in sourcing, environmental compliance, and labor ethics. For a brand that built its empire on secrecy and exclusivity, being forced into accountability wasn't just uncomfortable, it was unprecedented. Sustainability-focused investors are watching with sharpened focus, and they're ready to pull the plug. Several ESG, environmental, social, and governance funds have already signaled plans to divest from Hermès if the toxic waste claims linked to its leather suppliers in Dongguan are substantiated. For institutional investors who once viewed luxury as a safe bet with ethical polish, the environmental findings represent more than reputational risk. They suggest a fundamental breach of compliance. Simultaneously, Gen Z, now a dominant force in luxury consumption, is turning its back. This is a generation that prioritizes transparency over tradition. They want receipts, ethical sourcing, and human dignity built into every stitch, not corporate secrecy wrapped in a $20,000 price tag. And without their trust, no amount of brand heritage can revive the myth. The fallout isn't limited to retail shelves. The secondary market, once a cornerstone of the Hermès ecosystem, is hemorrhaging. Vintage resellers, many of whom built entire businesses around Birkin and Kelly bags, are watching prices nosedive. Rare pieces that once fetched six figures are now languishing on consignment sites. Because in luxury, perception is everything. When buyers start questioning where, how, and by whom something was made, rarity loses its magic. Resale is about trust, and that trust has been torched. Even rival houses like Gucci, Dior, and Chanel are no longer feeling safe. Sources inside LVMH say internal compliance teams have been mobilized across all brands to audit subcontractors and vet supplier chains, an urgent scramble to avoid becoming the next viral exposé under the microscope of TikTok sleuths and investigative influencers. Now, Hermès stands at a brutal crossroads. It can cling to its century-old code of secrecy, one that once worked in its favor, or it can gamble on radical transparency, something almost unheard of in haute luxury, because the power isn't in Paris anymore. It's in the hands of consumers scrolling through TikTok, sharing leaked PDFs, and zooming into stitching inconsistencies on factory footage. If those thumbs keep swiping past the orange box in disgust, a dynasty collapses. But if Hermès seizes this moment to pull back the curtain, show the workers, the factories, the freight paths, and price their goods accordingly, they might just salvage what's left of the Birkin legend. Because luxury has always sold two things: craftsmanship and a story. The story is now in shreds, the receipts are public, the lawsuit is live, and the internet isn't letting this go. So the next time that iconic orange box crosses your feed, the only question that will matter is, who really stitched these seams, and who's been pocketing the difference?